Okay, just going to recap the weekend and talk about how this is going to be a challenging fight for Georgia to win this national championship. Anybody that wins it this year, they will have really earned it. That's not coming from the first round games, which were quite uninteresting. I mean, I'm a fan of college football. I like it. I watch it. I cover it, but these were bad. These were bad games. I don't know if it's the committee's fault. They did a bad job, and when you get these sort of bad matchups, everybody goes to the committee. But they were hamstrung at the start with the way this thing was laid out. Um, Look, Ohio State's the best team, and if they play like they did Friday night, I'm not sure that they lose. Their path is very difficult, and they're a very narrow favorite over Oregon and Pasadena. And that game will come just before Georgia Notre Dame, which, Georgia's also a narrow favorite. So this is going to be, the biggest thing I took away from it was now we're at the heavy hitter part. We've got 6 teams, I think, that can legitimately win the national championship. And then you also have Boise and Arizona State who have their puncher's chance. But I don't, not a lot of people, probably, Oregon, Georgia, Texas, have the ability to stick with Ohio State the way that they played last night. But I don't know if Ohio State can play like they did last night the entire time. I mean, part of that was kind of an embarrassing thing to me if you're Ohio State. I mean, you got, 40,000 Tennessee fans virtually taking your stadium over. You're chanting SEC. You've got 3 wins in your entire program's history, 100 plus years of Ohio State football. You're chanting SEC at Tennessee. They didn't even play for the SEC championship game. And for the SEC championship, they haven't won the SEC championship since last century. You're chanting at Tennessee. We got some hurt feelings up at Ohio State. And then you're playing Rocky Top at the end of the game. Like, who's controlling things up there? Like, what child is running the show? This is not a junior varsity, basketball game. And when you're out there trademarking the word "the" or trying to, I mean, I thought it was a bad look. All that was a bad look for Ohio State. But on the field, they were exceptional. They were tremendous. I mean, I think they were the team to beat coming into this thing. They're not the favorite, but they sure seem like the team to beat. Now, the good news is, if you're Georgia, a couple of things. You are definitely on the easier side of this thing. My take immediately, now that we know all of the data, is I think the Notre Dame game is probably the game. The winner of that game will probably go to play for the national championship. Probably. I mean, for me, Penn State, somewhat like Notre Dame. They're not an explosive offense. A lot of those games that a lot of the game on Friday night was a slow, plodding game. I mean, on Saturday afternoon, SMU could not have played worse. And, Penn State needs to be given credit for what they had to do with that. But that was really, a lot of that was on SMU just being straight up horrible in that game. I think that's the thing with Notre Dame. And, Georgia will be favored over Penn State if they win. Notre Dame would probably be a narrow favorite over Penn State if they were to win. Georgia is narrowly favored over the Irish right now. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good situation for Georgia if they can just kind of keep things rolling the way that they did. Now, here's the problem. As most of you know, you're breaking in a new starting quarterback. And, that's a lot. I mean, that's a significant thing. But, I don't know. I don't know. It's Gunner is the situation with Gunner Stockton is as follows. He's not as good as Carson Beck, or he'd be the starting quarterback. I mean, that's just a fact, okay? And that's number one. Number two, Kirby's not always gotten it right with the starting quarterbacks. And, I mean, he missed Stetson Bennett, and then he got that right though because of injury. But then they stuck with Stetson too. And then number 3, and this is the part that people need to remember. That Carson is injured doesn't mean that Georgia can't still perform really high with Gunnar Stockton, but it can still be true that Gunnar shouldn't have been the starter over Carson. We have to be able to, keep multiple things that can be possible or true in our brain at the same time. These guys have won 2 national championships out of the last 3 years. They've won 2 national championships this decade, Georgia. And, the coaching staff has really, changed, but the person at the top has not. And so when you look at the situation with Gunnar Stockton, there's a reason why Carson Beck was the starting quarterback. I think you see that, the way that Georgia can be explosive under Carson Beck. But I think, too, this is another, I don't know what letter I'm on, I guess D at this stage. Because you're going away from Carson because of injury, that gives you 3.5 weeks to get ready for a Notre Dame team that is good on defense. But that Georgia perhaps could become more consistent because of the run game that Carson didn't get a lot of the season because Etienne was not in this thing. And now you also, in addition, the part I'm leaving out of Part D subsection 1 here, is you can do read option now. I mean, and that they're going to have to respect that. Should really change. That right there has the capability of really changing the Georgia offense and therefore the steadiness of the team. When you're doing read option with Carson Beck, which I don't know how often that happened. I mean, I guess it happened. When you're doing it with Carson Beck, you're not going to really respect it a ton. When you're doing it with Gunnar Stockton, people have to respect it because the kid can run. He can score a 30-yard touchdown running. So that's the thing. Now, what we don't know is how Gunnar will react as a his first game starting is, as big a game as Georgia's played this season. And, it's an elimination game. It's a bowl game. You're against Notre Dame, which, sounds great to people my age and older for sure. But, I mean, Notre Dame's not done anything in a very long time. And, no, I don't mean that in any I'm not saying that in a disrespectful way. If you're taking that in a disrespectful way, that's your deal. You can just get at me in the comments. I don't care. They haven't done anything in a long time. They've won, they didn't win the ACC when they were in it that 1 year. They had a chance to do that. They've not won a major bowl game in a long time. It's not because they're not good. It's not happened. I mean, I don't necessarily know why. I can get into that, but that's not the point of these videos. But Georgia's going to go down to New Orleans. They're going to have to be ready to deal with the maturation process for Gunnar Stockton as it comes. And, he was put into an extremely pressure-packed situation. Georgia was losing that game. And then he pushed him down the field and took the lead pretty much immediately in that game. Hey, make sure if you're running out of time for Christmas and you're in Gwinnett or Athens, obviously if you're in Athens, you know about Red Zone, but if you're in Gwinnett or even DeKalb County, it's well worth it, or Augusta, it's well worth it to drive to Athens, get a Christmas dinner, and go shop at Red Zone. They got all sorts of stuff. Man, I took this shirt. Hold on one second. You got to see this. This is hilarious. Okay. You can still go down there and get an ugly Christmas shirt. Okay, sweatshirt. This is awesome. And our buddies at Red Zone have it. You've probably run out of time. That says on the natty list. That's hilarious. You probably run out of time for them to send it to you, but go ahead and go down there and grab it. You're not too late to go down there. They're going to close at 2 o'clock on Christmas Eve. Don't goof around. Do not goof around. But I think, let's be honest about where this thing is at. I mean, it's going to be a tricky situation for Georgia. They're not going to be able to get behind, by, when they get down 10, that's probably where they're like, well, we need to stop this now because we don't have Carson to chunk us right back into this thing. It's just a different style. But, the defense is going to have to play the way it is capable of playing, probably for 3 straight games. But to get out of New Orleans alive, Georgia matches up well with Notre Dame. That's not a challenge. Notre Dame's got a good quarterback. I would not say he's an elite quarterback, but he can prove me wrong on that front too. He did not have an elite night against Indiana, but he played pretty well. Look, Riley Leonard is a good quarterback. He has been productive a lot of the season. Now, with that said, they have not played a challenging schedule necessarily, but he's been pretty productive often. 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He went the first 3 games without. The first 4 games of the season, he threw 1 touchdown. So he certainly picked it up, but he picked it up against some teams that weren't so hot. The truth is they've not played a very challenging schedule, but that's okay. It is what it is. He does not have a 300-yard game. He does not have a 250-yard game throwing it. So they need him to run. He's a really good runner. He's a dual threat guy. He's not Jalen Milroe. You watch him play. He's not that. And it's going to be tough for him. Anybody playing Georgia as a quarterback, it's tough for them. But the guy set a record for 15 touchdowns for a quarterback. That's a lot at Notre Dame. And so, he's definitely, that's going to be problematic, because when you're scoring as many touchdowns, basically running it as you are throwing it, that's something to be aware of. But I would be worried if I'm Notre Dame. I would be concerned. The part that I'd be concerned about is Georgia going to make us one-dimensional? Because if they make us one-dimensional, we got a real problem. And the teams that did not make one-dimensional this season was Alabama and Mississippi. Very specifically, those 2 teams. And I would say quite specifically Ole Miss. But, there's a lot of unknown coming in this thing. Again, the point of these videos is not for me to sit up here and red glasses this thing for you. This is to tell you the truth. It's not going to be an easy game for Georgia. It may turn out to be. It may turn out to be an easy game for Notre Dame. I don't know. Georgia doesn't have their starting quarterback. They're missing. That's a big deal. And but in totality, Georgia is probably the better team. Now, losing your punter doesn't help when he was really a weapon for you, and the fact that you're losing your punter and your starting quarterback, you better hope you're scoring touchdowns, So, but I just will see. Riley Leonard's going to have. My suspicion is he's going to be okay, but he's not. They're not explosive in the pass game. Notre Dame. They have the one player who is quite explosive at receiver. At least he was on the one play. And then, the running back with that long run, that was a great play. So they got guys, but there's stuff that happened on that running play that just wouldn't happen to Georgia because they're just not, or at least it'd be very uncommon to happen to Georgia to see a 50-yard run or something like that. That's just not something we've seen. The gaps weren't where guys weren't in their gaps. You can't guess or get your ass whipped. Either of those two is unacceptable. Guessing in many ways is getting your ass whipped because you're not, doing what you're supposed to do. So, but I think the playoff, man, it's going to be a tough playoff. This isn't you beat Notre Dame and then you play someone. You got to beat Notre Dame and then play somebody else who either has an exceptional running back or it's Penn State, who, for all of my making fun of them, and there's a lot to make fun of, it's not like they can't beat Georgia. So there's that. But I think, to me, Ohio State, of the teams that played yesterday, looked like the best, or this weekend, looked like the best team. And I don't know if it wasn't close, but, Texas scoring as much as they did against Clemson, to me, I thought that was pretty impressive. They scored 38 points against a defense that's pretty good. And Ohio State scored 42 against a defense that's pretty good. Penn State scored 38, but 2 of those were pick sixes from a quarterback that looked like they belonged on a flag football field. So, in reality, of all of the winners, Notre Dame looked the worst. I don't know that matters at all, right? It doesn't. I'm not sure that matters in any way. I think that upper side of the bracket, it's serious business up there, man. And I think that's, Georgia's fortunate they avoided that. And if you're Oregon, if you're Dan up there at Oregon, you got to be wondering what in the world is happening that this is our quadrant, or our half, I should say. Even just your quadrant is hard. But I mean, that's what the big money, that's what that Nike's money for. That's what that Nike money is for, Dan, is to get it done. And Oregon's going to be a slight dog going to Pasadena, but they have a really good quarterback, and that's the challenge with Oregon, is you're going to have to stop them. But Georgia got Notre Dame first, and we'll just see how that goes. Thanks for watching.